This is the gaming PC that I built for my friend. Now I will share to you how I build and select the components of this PC. So let's see how it performs. The processor is the Ryzen 3 3100. It has 4 cores and 8 threads with 3.6 GHz and can boost up to 3.9 GHz with 65 watt TDP and on AM4 socket. This is based on Zen 2 microarchitecture. If you might wonder why I not go to the latest release Ryzen CPU, well, the main reason is the price and the availability here in my area. For now, Ryzen 3 3100 still a bang for a buck CPU, and also this CPU has 7nm process, which is the same with the Ryzen 5000 CPU uses. The motherboard is the Gigabyte A320M-S2H V2. This is a basic AM4 motherboard, but the key features that interest me is the PCIe Gen 3 M.2 slot that supports NVMe and SATA SSD, which means you can put M.2 SSD in this motherboard. And the Realtek Gigabit LAN features CPO speed for fast network latency. It means it can support internet speed and network speed up to 1000 megabytes per second or 1 gigabyte per second. And the CPO speed for fast network latency, this means it has no lags. This is very helpful when you are gaming online, which is this PC is meant for. But the main reason that I choose this motherboard is the price. A320 is the cheapest AM4 motherboard in the market. The downside of this is you cannot manually overclock the CPU. Anyway, overclocking the CPU can void the warranty in case you broke it. The RAM is the T-Force Vulcan 2x8 gigs in total of 16 gig Tough Edition clocked at 3200 MHz from Team Group. Actually, this is not the cheapest RAM in the market, but where I bought this component, this is the cheapest RAM available. Anyway, having at least 3200 MHz RAM for Ryzen CPUs is a good choice because Ryzen CPUs performs better on fast RAMs. For me, any brand will do as long as they are fast. The storage drives are WD Green 240GB SATA M.2 SSD for the operating system and the Seagate Barracuda 7200 RPM hard disk drive for files and games. Even though this M.2 SSD is not fast compared to NVMe's, it is just a little bit faster than the typical SSD in terms of speed. I choose this because it is cheap and you can use the other SATA ports for more storage in the future. The power supply is the SilverStone ST50F-ES230 500 watt. For me, even though this has a ketchup and mustard cables, but it has 80 plus rating, and Silverstone is a trusted brand power supply, and most of all, it is cheaper than the rest. The case is the Cougar MG120-G. This is a mid-tower case with tempered glass side panel. The downside of this case is the airflow. It doesn't have mesh front wherein air is not constrained. The air going in only relies on the small opening in front of this case. Anyway, it is a good looking case, especially I added this cheap set of 3 120mm LED fan that can be changed in different color using the remote, which makes this PC looks cool and also cools the system. And last but not the least, the most expensive components of this build, where I was forced to cheap out the motherboard, and this is the graphics card, which is the GTX 1660 Super from Palit. Originally, I planned using the GTX 1650 Super, but when my friends saw the GTX 1660 Super, which has a lot of RAM compared to the GTX 1650 Super, well, I have no choice but to cheap out the other component just to make it budget friendly. Anyway, GTX 1660 Super has 6GB GDDR6 VRAM and 1408 CUDA cores with 192 bus width. Actually, we go way over budget on this PC. We tend to spend around 30,000 pesos on this build. But since the PC parts right now are very expensive, especially here in my area, we spend around 42,270 pesos or around $846 US. I asked the retailer or the store we purchased these components why prices are expensive. They told me that supplies are limited. I think this is due to the pandemic. Anyway, as I remember, before the pandemic happened, this build could cost around 30,000 to 35,000 pesos or about 600 US dollars. Let's assemble this PC. All I need is this Phillips screwdriver and this Phillips screw for M.2 installation. I don't wear static wristband because my place is hot and humid. I don't worry about static charges. First, unbox the motherboard and place it on top of the motherboard box. Then lift this lever on the CPU socket. Second, unbox the processor. Line up the small triangle corresponding to the small triangle on the CPU socket. Then gently place it towards the socket. Then press down the lever to tighten the CPU. Remove the fan holder on the motherboard by unscrewing it. Then unbox the CPU heatsink, which is the rate stealth cooler which comes with every Ryzen 3 3100 CPU. Since this processor is new, it has thermal paste pre-applied. Then screw it into the motherboard and then plug the CPU fan header, which indicates CPU fan on the motherboard. Fourth, remove the small screw for M.2 SSD, unbox the 240GB M.2 Sata SSD, then insert it to the M.2 slot. Press down and screw it in place. Fifth, install the RAMs. In installing, press down these side levers on the RAM socket. This notch must be aligned on the notch of the RAM socket. Then put it and press it until you hear a click sound. Since we are running in dual channel, apply the same procedure on the second RAM. Now let's unbox the PC case, and it comes with one fan. And my style is installing the power supply first. Then I remove this fan because I will rearrange it because I will put this 3 RGB fan, 2 RGB fans in the front where the air comes in, and one from the back for exhaust. I will also reinstall this fan on top to help exhaust the hot air out. And don't forget to put the I/O shield. Always remember that these 3 small holes, which is the opening for the microphone and audio jack, must be underneath. Just press the sides until the last one clicks. After I screw the power supply and the fans and install the I/O shield, I prepared the necessary power cables like the CPU power connector on top, the 24-pin power connector on the side, and under is the PCIe power connector for the graphics card. Then I lay down the case, then check the standoffs are installed. But in this PC case, some of the standoffs are already in place, but this one is not installed. Then place it in the motherboard. Make sure it is lined up on the standoff screw holes, then screw in the motherboard. After that, connect the CPU power connector and the 24-pin power connector to the motherboard. Press firmly in place so that your PC will surely turn on. After that, I lay up again the case, then plug in the front panel pins in this manner. Then the USB 2.0, HD audio, and USB 3.0 connector. Then I installed the hard disk drive. By pulling out this hard disk drive case, which is very easy, you don't need to screw to install it in the case. Then plug in the SATA cable to the motherboard, then connect it to the hard disk drive, and also plug the SATA power connector. Now let's unbox this most expensive component, and this is the graphics card. Peel out the plastic protector on the graphics card. Before you install it, check first which slots that you will remove on the PC case. The basis is the PCI Express, which I lay later this graphics card. Since this will occupy 2 slots, I will remove these 2. Now let's insert this graphics card to the PCI Express slot. After that, connect the 6-pin power connector of the graphics card, then screw it in place. I am not an expert in cable managing PCs, but I tried my best, and this is how I cable manage this PC. Let's finish building this and see what it looks like.
Virus.
After that, I go to the BIOS, set up the memory profile or XMP. In this case, I set it to profile 1. This will enable the RAM to run on its advertised speed, which is 3200 MHz. Then I install Windows 10 and games. And these are the games that I installed on this PC. I set them all to the highest setting as possible in order to find out what this PC is capable of. But if you have the same components with this PC, I suggest to lower the settings on your favor to squeeze out more FPS, especially on competitive titles. Now let's go to games. That's how this PC performs. Actually, I assembled this PC last year, October 2020. That's why I did not test it with newer games. But it is capable to run newer titles in 2021. I started editing this video last year, but it really bothers me the goal of this video because I intend to create a budget PC build, but the prices of the components are very high or very expensive. up until I encountered some personal issue about the current situation right now, I almost gave up making videos for YouTube. But 2 months ago, I was really surprised about the growing of this channel. So I really appreciate you guys for commenting, giving suggestions, correcting my mistakes, or pointing out some details that I miss. I really appreciate you guys for doing that, because I really feel that there is someone who really cares about my videos. And also, it really helps me to improve a lot and grow more in this platform. Now, back to the PC build. Even though I built this PC last year, but the prices are still similar up until now. And also, Ryzen 3 3100 is still a bang for a buck CPU in terms of price performance. So, this CPU needs a GPU in order to work. Pairing it with GTX 1660 Super is a good option to pair the CPU, especially right now the prices of the GPUs are very expensive. This PC configuration is good for gaming only. 4 cores is enough for gaming, especially in newer titles. But if you game while streaming in this PC, I think it would really affect the gaming performance of this PC, because newer games right now really utilizes the 4 cores, and you need additional cores in order to process the streaming. Anyway, there are new Ryzen APUs being released right now. They are the Ryzen 5000G series CPUs. I think this is a best option if you want to build a budget PC right now. And later on, if the prices of the GPU are lower or good, you can add GPU later. That's all for now. I hope I give you some tips and ideas about gaming PC. For more contents like this, make sure you subscribe to support my channel, and everyone have a nice day.